The vibrant city lights of Singapore sparkled through the glass walls of the Marina Bay Financial Centre as I delivered the final line of my presentation. The room erupted in applause, 12 of Asia's top banking executives rising to their feet. I, Sarah Mitchell, had just closed the biggest fintech security deal of my career, a $50 million contract to revolutionize digital banking security across Southeast Asia. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My heart raced with pride as I watched these powerful figures, who had been skeptical just 2 hours ago, now nodding in appreciation of my innovative solutions. Brilliant. Presentation, Ms. Mitchell? Mr. Chen, the regional director of UOB Bank, shook my hand vigorously. Your cybersecurity solutions are exactly what we need in this evolving digital landscape. His words carried weight in the Asian banking sector, and I knew this endorsement would echo through the industry. Several other executives lined up to exchange business cards, a ritual I'd grown accustomed to during my 3 weeks in Asia. Their enthusiasm confirmed what I already knew. This deal would transform not just their banks, but my career as I packed up my laptop, organizing the scattered presentation materials into my leather briefcase, my phone buzzed. A notification from my banking app. Unusual account activity detected. I dismissed it without a second thought, too caught up in the moment of triumph. After 3 weeks of non-stop meetings across Singapore, Hong Kong, and Tokyo, living out of luxury hotels and surviving on room service and adrenaline, my only focus was getting home to Phoenix. Home to my husband, James, and our plans to finally start a family. At 35, I'd achieved everything I'd dreamed of professionally. Senior Vice President of Digital Security Solutions at CyberGuard Technologies, a corner office in downtown Phoenix with a view of Camelback Mountain, and now this landmark deal that would put me on the fast track to Chief Technology Officer. James had been my backbone through it all, supporting my crazy travel schedule, managing our beautiful home in Paradise Valley, and always being my voice of reason when I doubted myself. He'd put his own dreams of expanding his architectural firm on hold to support mine, something I reminded myself of whenever guilt crept in about my frequent absences. The irony of working in digital security wasn't lost on me as I absent-mindedly dismissed 2 more bank notifications on my 13-hour flight back to Arizona. System's probably acting up, I muttered, popping a sleeping pill and reclining my business class seat. If only I'd checked those alerts. If only I'd listened to that nagging voice in the back of my mind, the one I'd trained through years of cybersecurity work to never ignore suspicious patterns. But exhaustion and success had dulled my usually sharp instincts. Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport was quiet at 3 a.m. when I landed, the usual bustling terminals reduced to a ghostly calm. The desert air hit me with its familiar dry warmth as I wheeled my luggage through the terminal, past closed shops and cleaning crews preparing for the morning rush. My heels clicked against the polished floor, echoing in the near-empty space. I was exhausted, but exhilarated, already mentally planning how to tell James about the deal's success and the bonus that would finally let us start IVF treatments. Another bank notification popped up. This time, a call. The number looked official, Arizona First Bank, but at 3 a.m.? I declined it, adjusting my silk blazer and checking my reflection in a darkened shop window. Probably some automated system going haywire. I'd deal with it after some sleep and a proper reunion with James. After all, what could be so urgent that it couldn't wait until morning? The lights of Paradise Valley twinkled below as my Uber wound its way up the mountainside, past gated estates and manicured desert landscapes. Our Mediterranean-style villa came into view, its white walls glowing softly under the desert moon. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it 3 weeks ago. The bougainvillea James had planted still cascaded over the entrance arch in brilliant purple blooms, a splash of color against the stark white walls that had made me fall in love with the house 2 years ago, but something felt off as I punched in our gate code. The fountain in the circular driveway wasn't running. James always kept it on. He knew I loved coming home to the sound of trickling water, a small luxury that helped wash away the stress of travel. The security light seemed dimmer than usual, and James's prized Tesla wasn't in its usual spot under the carport. Small details that shouldn't have bothered me, but in my line of work, anomalies often spelled trouble. Must be under maintenance, I reasoned, trying to shake off my security expert paranoia. The front door opened before I could reach for my keys. James stood there, handsome as ever in his casual white shirt and jeans. His dark hair slightly tousled like he'd been running his hands through it, a nervous habit I knew well. But something was different. The usual sparkle in his green eyes was replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Fear? Guilt? In 15 years together, I'd never seen him look quite like this. "Welcome home, babe," he said, his voice carrying an unusual tremor. He took my luggage, his movements stiff, mechanical. Not the warm homecoming I'd expected after 3 weeks apart. No passionate embrace, no trail of kisses down my neck, none of our usual reunion rituals. As I stepped into our soaring foyer, the silence felt heavy, oppressive even. No soft jazz playing from our whole house sound system. No aroma of James's signature welcome home pasta, a tradition he'd started during my first business trip 7 years ago. Just silence and an inexplicable tension that made the hair on my neck stand up. "The Singapore deal?" James asked, not quite meeting my eyes as he set my luggage by the stairs. I noticed his hands shaking slightly as he stepped back. "Closed it." I smiled, trying to dispel the strange atmosphere. 50 million. Chen literally stood up and applauded. "They're implementing our security protocols across 6 countries. I waited for his usual enthusiastic response, the proud smile that always made my achievements feel even sweeter. My phone buzzed again. Arizona First Bank, a 4th call in as many hours. The screen glowed accusingly in the dim foyer light. "Everything. Okay?" I asked, watching James's face carefully. "The bank keeps calling. Something about unusual activity." He froze, just for a split second, but long enough for my trained eye to catch it. In my line of work, microsecond hesitations often revealed hidden truths. That tiny pause sent alarm bells ringing through my exhaustion-fogged mind. "Probably nothing," he said too quickly, his voice an octave higher than normal. "You know how paranoid these security systems are. You designed half of them, right?" He attempted a laugh that sounded more like a choke, running his hands through his hair again, leaving it standing in wild tufts. The weight of unspoken words hung between us, heavy as storm clouds in the desert sky. Something was terribly wrong, and my perfect homecoming was about to shatter into a million pieces. I kicked off my heels, my feet sinking into our plush carpet as the strangeness of the situation began to crystallize. The massive Rothko-inspired painting in our living room, usually perfectly aligned with the custom lighting beneath it, was tilted at an odd angle. The fresh orchids James meticulously maintained on the onyx console table, his pride and joy, since winning several local botanical awards, were conspicuously absent. Their empty spots seemed to scream that something was amiss. "The maid service changed their schedule," James offered unprompted, noticing my gaze lingering on the missing flowers. "They'll be here tomorrow instead." Another lie. Maria, our housekeeper, of 5 years, was religiously consistent with her Monday and Thursday schedule. Today was Thursday. Walking further into our home, more discrepancies emerged. The temperature was set at 75 degrees. James always kept it at a crisp 72. His architectural drafting table, usually cluttered with ongoing project sketches, was completely bare. The vintage Macallan 18 we'd been saving for my next promotion was missing from our bar cart. "I need to check some work emails," I said, moving toward our shared home office. James stepped in front of me with surprising speed. "Let me make you some tea first," he insisted, his voice strained. "You must be exhausted from the flight. The office can wait until morning." The office, where we kept all our financial documents, Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Where my laptop with direct access to our joint accounts was stored. Where the internal security camera I'd installed last year continuously recorded activity. James had never tried to keep me from that room before. My phone buzzed again. Arizona First Bank's 5th call. Each ring felt more ominous than the last. James flinched at the sound, a bead of sweat forming on his temple despite the air conditioning. "That's it," I said firmly. "I'm answering it." "Sarah, wait." James reached for my phone, but I stepped back, my suspicion now fully aroused. The James I knew would never grab for my phone. The James I knew respected boundaries. Who was this stranger? Wearing my husband's face? I walked to our kitchen, my stockinged feet silent on the marble floors. The space was immaculate. Too immaculate. No coffee mug in the sink. James was notorious for leaving them. No morning newspaper on the counter, his daily ritual. No magnets on the refrigerator, including the one from our Amalfi Coast honeymoon, that hadn't moved in 7 years. "I can explain everything," James said, following me. Just let me explain before you make that call." I turned to face him, really looking at him now. His usually pristine nails were bitten to the quick. A button on his shirt was misaligned. The designer watch I'd given him for our 10th anniversary, the one he never took off, was missing from his wrist. "Then explain," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake beginning in my chest. "Explain why our house feels like a stage set. Explain why you're acting like you've seen a ghost. Explain why our bank is desperately trying to reach me at 4 a.m. James opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No words came out. In their place, tears began forming in his eyes. In 15 years together, I'd only seen him cry twice. At our wedding and when his father passed away. "I was trying to help us," he finally whispered. "To give us the future we always talked about." "What future? What are you talking about?" The earthquake in my chest was spreading, threatening, to split me in two. "The fertility treatments," he said, his voice breaking. "The IVF you wanted, the baby we've been trying for. We have savings for that," I cut in. "The bonus from this deal alone would cover—" "It's not enough," he interrupted. "Not for what I did. Not for what I thought would be a sure thing." A new notification lit up my phone screen. Not from the bank this time, but from our investment app. Account balance below minimum threshold. With trembling fingers, I opened the app. The numbers stared back at me, impossible and devastating. Our joint investment account, the one that had held over $800,000 last time I checked, showed a balance of $1,243. "James," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What did you do?" He sank into one of our kitchen bar stools, suddenly looking decades older. "I met this guy at the country club. He had an investment opportunity, cryptocurrency mining operations in Nevada, guaranteed returns of 300% within 2 months. Everyone at the club was talking about it." The room started spinning. James wasn't just a talented architect. He was brilliant with finances. He'd helped build our investment portfolio. He knew about cryptocurrency scams. We'd talked about them over dinner just months ago. "How much?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would destroy me. "All of it," he breathed. "The investments, our savings, and—" He paused, a fresh tear rolling down his cheek. "And the loan." "What loan?" The phone buzzed again. Arizona First Bank, now for the 6th time. With numb fingers, I finally answered. "Mrs. Mitchell," a crisp professional voice responded. "This is Sandra Martinez from Arizona First Bank's Fraud Department. We've been trying to reach you urgently. Are you aware of a $2.1 million loan taken out in your name 3 days ago?" The world tilted sideways. Black spots danced in my vision. I gripped the kitchen counter to stay upright. I can. Explain, James pleaded, reaching for me. The investment group needed more capital. They promised to double it within weeks. I used your social security number and digital signature from our tax documents. I thought by the time you got back from Singapore, we'd be millionaires. Many times over. We could have our baby, expand my firm, never worry about money again. I stepped away from his reaching hands, my back hitting the refrigerator. The honeymoon magnet was gone, just like our savings, our trust, our future. All erased by a man I thought I knew better than myself. The investment group, I said, my security training kicking in through the shock. Did you wire the money already? James nodded miserably. Yesterday. They said the mining operations were starting immediately. They promised the first returns by next week. In that moment, I knew three things with absolute certainty. There was no investment group. There were no mining operations. And my husband had just fallen for one of the oldest scams in the digital age, taking our entire life savings and my identity down with him. The phone was still at my ear. Sandra Martinez was asking if I wanted to report the loan as fraudulent. James was crying openly now, begging me to understand. And somewhere in Singapore, my greatest professional triumph was turning to ashes as my personal life imploded in a quiet kitchen in Paradise Valley. Mrs. Mitchell, are you still there? Sandra Martinez's voice crackled through the phone, pulling me back from the brink of complete shock. Years of handling digital security crises kicked in, compartmentalizing my personal anguish to deal with the immediate threat. Yes, I'm here, I responded, my voice shifting into what my colleagues called my incident response mode. I need detailed information about this loan. All access points, IP addresses, and documentation used for verification. I moved toward our home office, no longer letting James block my path. The office looked wrong. Our dual monitors were dark, Ethernet cables unplugged. The secure filing cabinet where we kept our important documents was slightly ajar, something I never would have allowed. As VP of Digital Security, I lived by protocols, both at work and home. The loan application was processed digitally, Sandra explained as I booted up my laptop. It used your digital signature, social security number, and employment verification from CyberGuard Technologies. All security questions were answered correctly, including your mother's maiden name and the street you grew up on. Of course they were. James knew everything about me. 15 years of marriage had given him access to every security question, every password hint, every detail of my life. I had trusted him completely, never imagining he would use that information to destroy us. The funds were wired to a Nevada-based account yesterday, Sandra continued. Given your position at CyberGuard and your excellent credit history, the loan was fast-tracked. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up our joint account records. The picture that emerged made me sick. It wasn't just the loan. James had been preparing for this for weeks. Small transfers at first, testing the waters, then larger ones, building up to the final devastating blow. James, I said, my voice ice cold as I stared at the screen. Why is there a $50,000 transfer to a personal account I've never seen before? He slumped against the doorframe, looking smaller somehow. Emergency fund, he whispered. In case the investment took longer than expected. The group said we might need to cover operational costs. I pulled up another screen. And the second mortgage on our house? When were you planning to tell me about that? James's face went pale. How did you? I'm a digital security expert. Remember? Did you think I wouldn't have alerts set up for any significant financial changes? I turned to the phone. Ms. Martinez, I need to put you on speaker. We're going to need documentation of everything. The next hour was a blur of revelations, each worse than the last. James had not only taken out the fraudulent loan in my name, but had systematically dismantled our entire financial life. The second mortgage, multiple high-interest credit cards, even a lien against my car. All done digitally, all using my information, all perfectly timed during my business trip when I would be too distracted to notice the alerts. The investment group provided all the paperwork, James kept saying, as if that somehow made it better. They had references, websites, everything looked legitimate. I pulled up my specialized security software, the one I used to trace digital fraud at work. "Show me," I demanded. "Show me their websites, their emails, everything they sent you." James fumbled with his phone, pulling up elaborate-looking investment prospectuses and professional emails. To an ordinary person, they might have looked legitimate, but to my trained eye, the red flags were glaring. Spoofed email domains, generic stock photos of mining operations, buzzwords designed to trigger greed and urgency. "You know what I do for a living," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. "You've heard me give lectures about exactly this type of scam. How could you fall for this?" "They had inside information," he protested weakly. "Everyone at the country club was talking about it. Richard Thompson made $500,000 in just 3 weeks. I typed rapidly, pulling up social media searches. "Richard Thompson doesn't exist," I said, showing him the fake LinkedIn profile. "This photo is from a stock image website. The country club members you talked to were part of the scam. They were building credibility, creating a fake social proof." The truth hit James like a physical blow. He staggered back, his face ashen. No, that's impossible. I had dinner with Richard. He showed me his trading accounts." "All fake," I said, pulling up more evidence. "Let me guess. Dinner was at the Capitol Grill? Private room? He insisted on paying with cash?" James nodded slowly, realization dawning in his eyes. "It's a common setup," I explained, my professional knowledge making the personal betrayal even more bitter. "They target affluent areas, infiltrate social circles, create elaborate backstories. The private room ensures no one overhears the conversation. Cash means no credit card trail." Sandra Martinez had been quietly taking notes. "Mrs. Mitchell, given your expertise, would you be willing to work with our fraud department on this? The sophistication of this scam suggests a larger operation." "Yes," I said firmly. "But first, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with." I turned to James. "I need every email, every document, every piece of communication you had with these people. And I need the truth. All of it." What emerged over the next hour was a nightmare of digital breadcrumbs. The scammers had done their homework. They knew about our fertility struggles, our desire for a family. They had tailored their pitch perfectly, promising returns that would make IVF treatments a non-issue. They had even created fake news articles about their mining operations, backdated to appear legitimate. "The money's gone, isn't it?" James asked quietly, after I'd traced the wire transfer to a series of shell companies. I nodded, the weight of our new reality settling over me. "They probably started moving it the moment it hit their account, split into smaller amounts, bounced through multiple jurisdictions. By now it's been converted to cryptocurrency, making it virtually impossible to trace." Sandra cleared her throat. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to know if you want to report this as identity theft. Given that Mr. Mitchell used your information without authorization." The word hung in the air between us. Identity theft, my own husband, the man I'd trusted with everything. The legal implications were staggering. If I reported it as fraud, James could face serious criminal charges. If I didn't, I would be legally responsible for the $2.1 million loan, not to mention all the other debt he'd accumulated. I looked at James, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and made a decision that would change both our lives forever. "I'd need everyone out of this room," I said quietly, my security training taking over. "Ms. Martinez, please hold all actions on the loan for the next hour. James, wait downstairs. I need to make some calls." Once alone in the office, I initiated our home's secure Wi-Fi protocol, an extra layer of protection I'd installed for working remotely. The magnitude of what I faced wasn't just personal anymore. As Senior VP of Digital Security, I had just closed a $50 million deal based on my company's reputation for protecting financial institutions from exactly this type of fraud. My hands shook as I dialed Marcus Chen, my direct supervisor at CyberGuard Technologies. Despite the early hour in Phoenix, I knew he'd be awake, another workaholic like me. He answered on the second ring. Sarah? Shouldn't you be resting after that Singapore triumph? Marcus, we have a situation. My voice remained steady as I outlined the basics. Not the personal betrayal, not yet. Just the facts. Unauthorized loans, identity theft, sophisticated social engineering scam. They used my credentials, Marcus, my reputation. The silence on the other end lasted several heartbeats. The UOB contract? Could be compromised if this gets out. I pulled up the contract details on my secure laptop. We sold them on our ability to prevent identity theft and financial fraud. Our entire pitch was based on my track record of spotting these scams. If the press gets wind that their new security consultant, just had my identity stolen. Christ, Marcus muttered. The Asian markets would have a field day. Our stock would tank. The whole deal could collapse. I opened another window, checking CyberGuard's stock price in the pre-market trading. Even a hint of scandal could wipe out billions in market value. My personal nightmare was about to become a corporate crisis. There's more, I continued, each word tasting like ash. The scammers had detailed knowledge of my schedule, my movements. They knew exactly when I'd be in Asia, too distracted to notice the account alerts. Inside information? Marcus's voice sharpened. Possibly. I hesitated, then added, Marcus, they knew things only someone close to me could know. Personal details about medical procedures I was considering. Information that isn't in any database. The implication hung heavy in the air. If word got out that a senior executive's personal life had compromised company security, the damage would be catastrophic. Walk me through your exposure, Marcus said, shifting into crisis management mode. I pulled up my personal risk assessment, matrix, another security habit. Primary vulnerability, $2.1 million fraudulent loan in my name. Secondary, approximately $900,000 in liquidated assets and additional credit lines. Total exposure approaching $3.5 million. Jesus, Sarah, it gets worse. I clicked through more screens. They used my digital signature from company documents, potentially accessed through my home network. If they breached my personal security, they could have accessed company files. Marcus finished the thought. What was on your home system? My stomach churned as I reviewed my home office setup. Preliminary designs for the UOB security protocols, early-stage testing data, client lists, containment. Options? Limited, I admitted. The money's gone, converted to cryptocurrency and bounced through multiple shells. Standard recovery procedures would be useless. Marcus was quiet for a moment. And the personal aspect of this breach? I glanced toward the stairs where James waited. Complicated. Filing criminal charges would mean public records, press coverage. Every vulture financial journalist would love to run the story. Cybersecurity expert falls victim to identity theft. And if you don't file charges, I'm legally responsible for the debt. My assets, my future earnings, everything would be at risk. I pulled up my employment contract, including my professional reputation and possibly my position at CyberGuard. The sound of breaking glass downstairs interrupted our conversation. I muted the call and listened, years of security work making me instantly alert. Footsteps, a muffled curse. James, probably cleaning up his own mess. A perfect metaphor for our situation. Marcus, I said, unmuting. I need options, real ones. He sighed heavily. Officially, I need to report this to the board. Any potential compromise of our security protocols requires full disclosure. And unofficially? You've got 12 hours before the Asian markets open. Whatever you're going to do, whatever containment strategy you choose, it needs to happen before then. I checked the time. 5:17 a.m. in Phoenix, 8:17 p.m. in Singapore. The clock was ticking. One more thing, Marcus added. That $50 million deal you just closed? The board meets at noon to finalize the terms. They'll want you on the video call to walk through the security protocols. The irony was staggering. In 7 hours, I was supposed to convince Asian banking executives to trust our company with their digital security, while my own life had been digitally dismantled. I understand, I said, my mind already formulating plans. I'll handle it. After ending the call, I sat in the pre-dawn darkness of my home office, the gravity of my situation sinking in. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't even about James's betrayal. My entire professional identity, the one thing I thought I could still count on, was at risk. I pulled up the dossier I'd compiled on the scammers. Their technical sophistication suggested this wasn't their first operation. The social engineering, the targeted approach, the timing, it was too perfect. They hadn't just stolen our money. They'd potentially compromised corporate secrets, worth billions. A notification popped up on my screen, an email from UOB Bank. They wanted to schedule a preliminary security audit next week. The walls were closing in. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an encrypted hard drive, my personal insurance policy that contained backups of everything. As I connected it to my laptop, I made a decision. I couldn't save my marriage, but maybe I could save everything else? The encrypted hard drive hummed to life, its blue indicator light piercing the dim office. I initiated my personal crisis protocol, something I'd developed for clients but never imagined using myself. Step 1. Assess the full damage. Step 2. Identify all vulnerabilities. Step 3. Develop containment strategy. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I accessed the dark web monitoring tools I'd helped design. If the scammers were trying to sell any of the compromised data, it would show up here first. The search algorithms crawled through hidden forums and marketplaces, looking for any mention of CyberGuard Technologies or my name. A hit. My breath caught as I read the posting. Fresh corporate access. Fortune 500 cybersecurity firm. Asian market expansion plans. Bidding starts at 50 BTC. They weren't just after money. They were after everything. I reached for my secure phone, not the compromised personal one, and dialed a number I'd hoped never to use. After 3 rings, a gruff voice answered, Raven Securities. Authorization code Delta 79 Echo, I said. I need a full spectrum sweep and containment. Priority black. Acknowledged. Location? I gave them my address, fighting back exhaustion. Raven Securities was the industry's best-kept secret, a team of elite hackers turned security specialists. They weren't cheap, but they were thorough. Team en route. 30 minutes. I ended the call and turned to my next task. The sound of James pacing downstairs echoed through the house as I pulled up our personal financial records. Everything needed to be documented before it disappeared. Wire transfers, loan applications, credit card statements. Each transaction told part of the story. The doorbell rang at exactly 5:47 a.m. Through the security camera, I watched a nondescript white van pull into our driveway. 4 people in plain clothes emerged, carrying what looked like maintenance equipment. Our cover story was already in place. Routine security system upgrade. I met them at the door before James could react. Office is upstairs, I said quietly. Full spectrum sweep, looking for any hardware implants or wireless intrusion points. The team leader, a woman with close-cropped gray hair who went by Echo, nodded once. Your husband? Person of interest. Monitor but don't engage. They moved through the house with practiced efficiency, setting up scanning equipment and deploying countermeasure devices. James watched from the kitchen, confusion etched on his face. Sarah, what's going on? Who are these people? I ignored, Him, focusing on Echo's preliminary report. Multiple unauthorized access points detected, she said, showing me a tablet display. Someone's been monitoring your network traffic for at least 3 weeks. My blood ran cold. The timing aligned perfectly with the scammers' first contact with James. They hadn't just gotten lucky. They'd been watching us, gathering intelligence, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Here, Echo pointed to a blinking dot on the screen. Hardware keylogger on your primary workstation. Professional grade. Expensive. I stared at the tiny device they'd extracted from my keyboard. Someone had physically accessed my home office to plant it. The implications were staggering. James, I called out, my voice carefully controlled. When exactly did Richard Thompson first visit our house? He appeared in the doorway, looking lost. About a month ago, for dinner. He admired your office setup, asked to see... Did you leave? Him alone in here? Even for a minute? James's face crumpled as realization dawned. He said he had an urgent call. Maybe 5 minutes. Oh God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. Echo's team continued their sweep, uncovering more surveillance devices, a modified router, a compromised smart home hub. Even our security cameras had been turned against us, providing the scammers with real-time intelligence about our movements. Pulled up my calendar from 3 weeks ago. There it was, the dinner party James had insisted on hosting. The night our lives began unraveling, though we hadn't known it then. Containment options? I asked Echo. She gestured to her team's equipment. We're setting up a clean room protocol. New hardware, air-gapped systems, full-spectrum signal jamming. They won't be able to monitor you anymore. I nodded, already moving to the next phase of my plan. I need a secure line to Singapore and access to cryptocurrency tracking tools. Echo produced a satellite phone and a laptop running specialized software. The phone connects through our private network. Untraceable. The laptop has our latest crypto tracing algorithms. I took both devices, noting James's confused expression. He had no idea about this side of my work, the shadow world, of corporate security where the real battles were fought. The devices they planted, I said to Echo. I want them analyzed, every component, every serial number. If they bought even one part through a traceable source, already on it. She held up an evidence bag containing the keylogger. This particular model has some unique characteristics, could help us identify the supplier. A notification pinged on the secure laptop. Someone was trying to access my corporate email from a location in Nevada, the same state where the fraudulent wire transfers had been sent. Got you, I whispered, fingers flying across the keyboard. The access attempt had left a digital fingerprint, a trace I could follow back to its source. James hovered in the doorway, watching as Echo's team transformed our house into a high-tech command center. Sarah, please, talk to me. What's happening? I looked up from the laptop, seeing him clearly for the first time since this nightmare began. He wasn't just a victim of the scam. He was an unwitting accomplice who had given the criminals exactly what they needed. Access to our home, our lives, and most importantly, my corporate secrets. What's happening, I said, my voice steady, is that I'm cleaning up this mess. All of it. But right now, I need you to go downstairs and write down everything you remember about Richard Thompson and his associates. Every detail, no matter how small. The secure line to Singapore crackled with static as Mr. Chen's voice filled my makeshift command center. Ms. Mitchell, are you saying our entire security implementation needs to be delayed? His tone carried the weight of $50 million and the reputation of 6 major Asian banks. I glanced at the multiple screens surrounding me in what used to be my home office. Echo's team had transformed it into a digital war room, with real-time tracking of cryptocurrency movements and dark web activities. 20 hours had passed since discovering James's betrayal, and things had only grown more complex. Not delayed, Mr. Chen. Enhanced. I chose my words carefully, watching a red dot pulse on one of the monitors. Another attempted breach of CyberGuard systems from an IP address in Singapore. We've uncovered a sophisticated attack vector that could compromise the entire Asian banking sector. I need 48 hours to implement additional protocols. The silence that followed felt eternal. Finally, Chen spoke, his words measured. The board meets in 3 hours to finalize the contract. They won't appreciate last-minute changes. A message flashed across my secure tablet. Trace complete on cryptocurrency wallet. Funds moving through exchanges in Macau. Echo's team was making progress, but not fast enough. Mr. Chen, I said, injecting confidence into my voice despite my exhaustion. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this call. The attack vector we've discovered isn't just targeting CyberGuard. They're after the entire Asian banking infrastructure. Your competitors, your partners, everyone. Another screen lit up, with an urgent alert. Someone was attempting to sell proprietary CyberGuard code on a dark web marketplace. The asking price? 200 Bitcoin. Explain, Chen demanded. I took a deep breath, preparing to navigate the delicate balance between revealing enough to justify the delay while protecting my own precarious situation. Before I could respond, my secure phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Board emergency meeting called. Your presence required. Now. Mr. Chen, I need to put you on hold for 5 minutes. This is related to what we're discussing. I switched to the board call, my heart pounding. The faces of CyberGuard's executive team filled my screen, their expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed hostility. Sarah, our CEO, Patricia Barnes, began without preamble. We've received an interesting email. Someone claiming to have proof that our senior VP of digital security has been compromised. They're threatening to release details to our competitors unless we pay $50 million. Coincidentally, the exact amount of the UOB contract. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I kept my face neutral, mind racing through implications. The scammers weren't just after James's wire transfers. They were playing a much bigger game. The email included screenshots, Patricia continued, of certain financial transactions. Care to explain why there's a $2 million loan taken out in your name the day before you closed the Singapore deal? I could feel my carefully constructed containment plan crumbling. The scammers had outmaneuvered me, turning my own crisis into corporate leverage. Madam CEO, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. What I'm about to share requires highest-level clearance. We have an active corporate security operation in progress. I quickly outlined the situation, not the personal details, but the professional implications. The sophisticated surveillance, the targeted attack, the potential compromise of our Asian expansion plans. You're saying this loan situation is part of a larger corporate espionage attempt? Patricia's eyes narrowed. Yes, and we've traced the activity to... A loud crash from downstairs interrupted me. Echo burst into my office, her usual calm demeanor shattered. We've got company. 3 vehicles just breached the perimeter. Professional team, armed. As if on cue, the power cut out. My screens flickered to backup power, but the damage was done. The secure connection to both calls dropped. They're not here to steal data, Echo said, quickly disconnecting crucial hardware. They're here to destroy evidence. Someone talked. My mind raced to James. Had he reached out to Richard Thompson again? Warned him about our investigation? Safe. Room protocol. Echo barked into her radio. Package the equipment and move to secondary location. Now! The sound of breaking glass echoed from below. Echo's team moved with practiced efficiency, transferring our crucial tracking data to portable drives. But I knew we'd lose precious time in the relocation, time the scammers would use to further cover their tracks. My phone lit up with messages. Patricia. Call back immediately. Your job depends on it. Chen. Board meeting moved up. Decision required now. Marcus. What the hell is happening? Stocks dropping on rumors. Echo grabbed my arm. We need to move. They're inside the house. Wait, I said, making a split-second decision. I pulled up my corporate access credentials and began typing rapidly. "What are you doing? We don't have time." "Creating a digital breadcrumb trail," I explained, fingers flying across the keyboard. "They want to destroy evidence? Let's give them something to chase." I initiated a series of fake data transfers, making it appear as though critical information was being uploaded to a cloud server. In reality, I was creating a honeypot, a trap that would occupy their attention while our real investigation continued from a secure location. The sound of footsteps on the stairs told us time was up. Echo's team had already disappeared through our pre-planned evacuation route, taking our crucial equipment with them. "Your husband?" Echo asked as we prepared to leave. I hesitated. James was somewhere in the house, possibly in danger. But he was also the reason we were in this mess. Had he inadvertently or intentionally led them here? The safe house was a modern apartment in downtown Phoenix, its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Echo's team had transformed the open-concept living room into a command center within minutes. But my mind was still at our house, with James. I'd made the tactical decision to leave him behind, the first time I'd ever chosen my professional life over our marriage. "Signal's clean," Echo announced, reconnecting our tracking systems. "No one followed us, but we lost 30 minutes in the transfer." I nodded, watching the cryptocurrency tracking software reboot. The digital breadcrumb trail I'd left was working. Our monitors showed the attacker's systems actively engaging with the honeypot data. My secure phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost declined it until I noticed the country code, #852, Hong Kong. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Ms. Mitchell." A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "My name is Lin Wei. I believe we have a mutual problem." I put the call on speaker, signaling Echo to start tracing. "I'm not in a position to discuss any problems at the moment." "Really? Not even the $40 million your husband's investment group stole from the Bank of East Asia last month? Or the $60 million they took from Singapore United 2 weeks ago?" My heart skipped. These were numbers we hadn't uncovered in our investigation. "I'm listening. I'm the head of cybersecurity for Bank of East Asia. We've been tracking this group for months. They hit us first, used our data to target Singapore United, and now they're after your UOB deal. It's all connected." Echo's screen lit up with confirmation. The call was genuinely from Bank of East Asia's secure line. "The loan in my name," I said slowly. "It wasn't just about the money, was it?" "No. They needed your credentials, your reputation. The money was just a bonus. Their real target is the upcoming Asian banking security integration. Your UOB contract was the final piece they needed." A pattern was emerging, bigger than anything we'd imagined. I pulled up the files on Richard Thompson and his group. "They've been planning this for months," Lynn continued. "Infiltrating country clubs, targeting key executives through their families. Your husband wasn't the first, just the most successful." My screen pinged, an incoming email from an encrypted source. Lynn's credentials and documentation of the previous bank attacks. The scope was staggering. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because in 6 hours they're going to use your compromised credentials to access the test servers for the new Asian banking security protocol. Once they're in, they can insert their own backdoors. Every bank in the network will be vulnerable." Echo's team was already verifying Lynn's data. Multiple screens showed matching patterns between the previous attacks and our situation. "We have proof of their previous attacks," Lynn said. "Account numbers, transfer records, everything. But we need your help to stop what's coming. You're the only one with high enough clearance to lock them out of the test servers." A message flashed across my tablet. James was trying to reach me through his lawyer. I ignored it. "If what you're saying is true," I said, "why not go public? Alert the authorities?" "The same reason you haven't. To prevent market panic. If word gets out that multiple Asian banks have been compromised, it could trigger a regional banking crisis. We need to handle this quietly." She was right. The Implications of a coordinated attack on Asian banking infrastructure would be catastrophic. Global markets would plummet. Send me everything you have, I decided. And I mean everything. For the next hour, data poured in. Echo's team cross-referenced it with our own findings, building a complete picture. The group had been methodically targeting banking executives' families, using social engineering to gather intelligence before striking. Got something. One of Echo's analysts called out. The keylogger they planted in your office. It matches devices used in the Hong Kong attack. Same manufacturer, same supply chain. Another piece clicked into place. The country club connection? I said. They needed social proof, legitimacy. What better way than to infiltrate exclusive clubs where banking executives gather? There's more, Lynn added. We've identified their pattern. They always move the stolen funds through the same sequence of cryptocurrency exchanges. First Macau, then Singapore, finally ending in Dubai. I finished, watching our tracking software. Highlight the pattern. They're converting the crypto back to cash through UAE banks. Echo projected a global map, red lines showing the flow of funds. If we can intercept the transfers at any point in the chain, we can trace it back to them, I said. But we need access to the exchange data. Already handled, Lynn replied. Bank of East Asia has partnerships with major exchanges. I'm sending you direct API access now. My screen lit up with real-time cryptocurrency transaction data. Somewhere in that digital river of money was our stolen funds. And more importantly, a trail leading back to the thieves. There, Echo pointed to a cluster of transactions. Large transfers matching the pattern, moving through the Macau exchange right now. I leaned forward, watching the numbers flow. After hours of playing defense, we finally had a chance to strike back. Lynn, I said, can your team delay the transfers at the Singapore exchange? Give us time to track the endpoints? Already on it. I've also alerted our Dubai contacts to watch for the incoming conversions. New alert popped up. Someone was attempting to access CyberGuard's test servers using my credentials. The 6-hour window Lynn had warned about was closing fast. They're moving earlier than expected, Echo warned, trying to beat us to the punch. I made a quick decision. Lynn, I need you to let them into the first level of the test servers. What? That's exactly what they want. Trust me. I have an idea. We're not just going to catch them, I explained, my fingers flying across the keyboard. We're going to let them think they've won. I pulled up CyberGuard's test server architecture, making rapid modifications. When they access the servers, they'll find exactly what they're looking for. Apparent vulnerabilities in the new banking security protocol. Echo leaned over my shoulder, watching as I crafted the trap. A honeypot within a honeypot. More than that, I said. We're giving them a fake victory. Lynn, is your team ready? Standing by. All Asian partner banks are alerted and monitoring. Created a sophisticated false environment, one that perfectly mimicked our actual banking security infrastructure, but contained subtle tripwires. Every access point, every piece of data they stole would carry hidden markers. They're in, Echo announced, watching the intrusion detection system. Moving through the first security layer exactly as predicted, the screens around us lit up with activity as the attackers began downloading what they thought were critical security protocols. In reality, they were collecting elaborately crafted decoys. Transaction detected at the Macau exchange, one of Echo's analysts called out. They're moving the stolen funds again. Big push, over 10 million in crypto. Let it flow, I ordered. Lynn, are your people in position? Yes. Dubai authorities are standing by. The moment they try to convert the cryptocurrency, we'll have them. My secure phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Board demanding update. What's happening with the UOB contract? Tell them to watch, I replied, then turned to my team. Phase 2. Release the markers. Every piece of false data the attackers had stolen suddenly became active, sending out encrypted signals. On our screens, their network lit up like a Christmas-y tree, revealing their entire infrastructure. "Got their command center," Echo said triumphantly. "High-rise office in Dubai. Same building where they're processing the crypto conversions. Lynn?" "Dubai authorities moving in now. We've frozen all associated accounts at partner banks." I allowed myself a small smile. Now for the finishing touch. I initiated the final phase of our trap, a cascading encryption that would lock them out of their own systems. "Multiple arrests in progress," Lynn reported. "They're finding servers, documents, everything. Sarah, they have records of every executive they've targeted, every family they've manipulated. Your husband wasn't their first victim, and he wouldn't have been their last." The mention of James sent a pang through my chest, but I pushed it aside. There would be time for personal matters later. "Funds recovery initiated," Echo's analyst announced. "Dubai authorities are reversing the cryptocurrency transactions. It'll take time, but most of the stolen money can be traced and returned." My phone lit up with messages from around the world. Marcus. "Bored watching the arrests live on financial news. Well done." Mr. Chen. "Most impressive, Ms. Mitchell. Contract concerns fully addressed." Patricia Barnes. "Crisis contained. We need to talk about your future at CyberGuard." But it was the last message that hit hardest, from James's lawyer. "In light of recent events, my client wishes to make full restitution and accept all responsibility." "Sarah," Lynn's voice cut through my thoughts. "There's something else you should see. The records we're uncovering. This group, they had detailed psychological profiles of every target. They didn't just exploit financial desperation, they specifically looked for families with particular vulnerabilities." My throat tightened. "Like couples struggling with fertility treatments?" "Exactly. They used deep personal trauma as their way in." "Your husband. They had been watching him, profiling him, long before they made contact. They knew exactly how to manipulate his desires, his fears." Echo's team had pulled up the psychological profiles, pages of detailed analysis, surveillance photos, medical records. The depth of the invasion was staggering. They turned our own pain into a weapon, I whispered. "But you turned it back on them," Echo said firmly. "You used their greed, their overconfidence against them." "That's worth something." The screens around us showed the aftermath of our operation. Arrests in multiple countries, funds being recovered, banking networks secured. A multi-million-dollar international fraud ring, brought down because they got too greedy, tried to exploit the wrong family. "Ms. Mitchell," Lynn said, "the Asian Banking Commission is convening an emergency session. They want you to head up a new cybersecurity task force. Your experience, your insights into how these groups operate, it could help protect countless families." I stared at the cityscape through the safe-house windows. Dawn was breaking over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere out there, James was waking up to news of the arrests, finally understanding the full scope of what he'd been drawn into. "The money," I said quietly. "How long until the funds are restored?" "We've already located most of it," Lynn replied. "The loan in your name will be nullified, clear evidence of fraud. The other accounts? Maybe a week to process everything through international channels." My phone buzzed again. This time, a direct message from James. "I saw the news. I never knew. I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk?" The UOB contract signing ceremony in Singapore was a blur of handshakes, cameras, and congratulations. 2 weeks had passed since the Dubai arrests, and I'd thrown myself into rebuilding, not my marriage, but my professional legacy. The Asian Banking Commission had fast-tracked their new cybersecurity initiative with me at the helm. Task Force Phoenix, they called it. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Ms. Mitchell, Your insights into social engineering vulnerabilities are revolutionary, Mr. Chen beamed, raising a champagne glass. Who would have thought personal experience would lead to such innovation? I maintained my professional smile, though the words stung. My personal experience had become a sanitized corporate success story. Woman uses husband's betrayal to catch international fraud ring. Perfect for the company newsletter. Back in my hotel suite at Marina Bay Sands, I finally allowed myself to look at the stack of legal documents my attorney had sent over. Divorce papers, loan nullification forms, asset recovery agreements. The framework of a dismantled life, rendered in precise legal language. My secure phone chimed, not with crisis alerts anymore, but with updates from Echo's team, still tracking. The ripple effects of our operation. 3 more arrests in Macau. Additional victim families identified in Hong Kong. Dubai authorities recovered another $12 million in crypto. A new message popped up, different from the others. James's lawyer. Client wishes to proceed with full admission of culpability. No contest to any terms. Requests only 1 meeting before signing. I walked to the window, staring out at the Singapore skyline. The same view I'd admired just weeks ago, fresh from my presentation, before everything imploded. My reflection looked different now, harder, more focused, dressed in CEO-worthy attire rather than my old business casual style. My laptop pinged with a video call request from Patricia Barnes, CyberGuard's CEO. I accepted, adjusting my posture, automatically. "Sarah," she began, uncharacteristically informal. "The board has finished their review of the incident. They're impressed, not just with the technical resolution, but with how you turned a potential disaster into a company triumph." "Thank you," I replied cautiously. "They've asked me to offer you a new position, Chief Risk Officer with a focus on human vulnerability factors in cybersecurity. Your experience, it provides a unique perspective." There it was again. My personal tragedy repackaged as a corporate asset. But wasn't that exactly what I'd done? Used my pain to fuel my success? "The compensation package is substantial," Patricia continued, "including funds to establish a foundation for families affected by similar schemes." I glanced at the divorce papers, then back at Patricia's expectant face on the screen. "I'll need to review the details." "Of course. But Sarah, one more thing." James reached out to the company directly. He wants to participate in our new security awareness program, share his story, help prevent others from falling into the same trap. My hand froze on the mouse. James, turning his mistakes into corporate training material? The idea was both logical and absurd. That would be his choice, I said carefully. "We're separating our decisions now." Patricia nodded sympathetically. "Take time to think about everything. The offer isn't contingent on his participation." After ending the call, I received another message, this time from Lin Wei at Bank of East Asia. "Task Force Phoenix briefing tomorrow. But first, dinner? Some conversations shouldn't happen in boardrooms." I accepted Lin's invitation, recognizing the olive branch she was extending. She'd become an unexpected ally through all this, understanding the delicate balance between professional strength and personal vulnerability. The restaurant was in a historic shop house, tucked away from the financial district's gleaming towers. Lin was already seated when I arrived, looking more casual than during our crisis calls. "The official story is spreading," she said as I sat down. "Digital security expert masterminds international fraud bust. Very clean, very corporate." "But not the whole truth," I finished. "No. The whole truth is messier. It's about trust and betrayal, about how the people closest to us can become our biggest blind spots." She poured tea from a delicate pot. "The banking commission doesn't want that story. They want protocols and procedures." "They want to believe it can't happen to them," I added, understanding dawning. "Exactly. But you and I know different. We know how these groups really work. Not just through code and computers, but through Human hearts. She slid a folder across the table. That's why I have a different proposal for you. Inside was a detailed plan for a new kind of security consultancy. Not just technical defenses, but human factor analysis. Understanding how emotional manipulation could bypass the strongest firewalls. The task force is important, Lynn continued. But this could help people before they become victims. Before their James meets their Richard Thompson. I studied the proposal, seeing the potential. A way to use my experience without exploiting it, to help others without commodifying my pain. What about your position at the bank? I asked. I've learned something from all this too. Sometimes the most secure path isn't the right one. 3 months after the Singapore dinner with Lynn, I stood in my new office in the heart of Hong Kong's financial district. The space was nothing like my old corner office at CyberGuard. Instead of corporate minimalism, the walls featured screens displaying real-time emotional sentiment analysis from financial centers worldwide. Our unique approach to security was already making waves. Vulnerability index spiking in Mumbai, announced Maya, our lead behavioral analyst. Multiple high-net-worth individuals reporting contact from investment specialists with oddly detailed knowledge of their personal lives. I studied the patterns on the main screen, watching as data points coalesced into recognizable social engineering attempts. We'd named our company Phoenix Shield, but unlike traditional cybersecurity firms, we didn't just protect digital assets. We protected people from their own vulnerabilities. Deploy the awareness team, I decided. And alert local banking partners. Classic isolation strategy in play. The Mumbai situation was painfully familiar. Wealthy individuals being slowly separated from their social support networks, made to feel uniquely understood by skilled manipulators. But this time, we'd caught it early. No families would be torn apart, no life savings lost. My secure phone buzzed with a message from Lynn. Hong Kong Banking Commission approved our new protocol. Human vulnerability factors now required in all security audits. It was a major victory, the first regulatory recognition that emotional manipulation was as dangerous as technical breaches. The work we'd started was changing how the financial world viewed security. My laptop pinged with another notification. James's impact statement had gone live on CyberGuard's training platform. I hadn't watched it yet. Wasn't sure if I ever would. But according to Marcus, it had become the most requested module in their corporate security program. Sarah? Maya appeared in my doorway. The support group is here. I nodded, gathering my materials. This was the part of our new venture that raised the most eyebrows in traditional security circles. Weekly meetings for families affected by financial manipulation schemes. Corporate executives, wealthy investors, and their spouses, all learning to rebuild trust after devastating betrayals. The conference room was already full when I arrived. Faces that would never have appeared in a standard corporate security briefing. A CEO's wife still angry about remortgaged properties. A bank director's husband grappling with gambling debts. A tech entrepreneur's partner who'd been manipulated into revealing company secrets. Welcome, everyone, I began. No PowerPoint slides or technical jargon in sight. Today we're discussing recognition patterns. How to identify when someone is being isolated from their support system. A woman, in her 50s, raised her hand. My husband's investment advisor always insisted on private meetings. Said other people wouldn't understand the opportunity. I see now what he was doing, but at the time, he was creating an exclusivity trap, I finished. Making your husband feel special, chosen, while simultaneously cutting him off from anyone who might question the scheme. Heads nodded around the room. These weren't technical vulnerabilities that could be patched with code. These were human weaknesses that required human solutions. My phone lit up with a text from Echo, who joined Phoenix Shield as our technical director. Dubai team traced new crypto pattern, similar to our case, but evolving. They're learning. Of course they were. As we developed new defenses, the manipulators developed new tactics. It was an endless dance, but now we were leading instead of following. After the support group, I had a video call scheduled with the Asian Banking Commission. They wanted to expand our human vulnerability protocols to all major financial centers. But first, I had another commitment. The small cafe near my office had become my regular spot for difficult conversations. James was already there when I arrived, looking both familiar and strange. 3 months had changed him too. The training module, he said as I sat down. Is it helping? I stirred my green tea, considering. According to CyberGuard, yes. Your story. It makes the threat real for people who think they're too smart to be manipulated. Our story, he corrected gently. I've been thinking about what you said, about turning pain into purpose. That's what you've built here, isn't it? I looked around at the bustling Hong Kong street outside, so far from our quiet life in Phoenix. I built something new, I agreed. Something that might have prevented what happened to us, if it had existed then. James nodded, understanding in his eyes. The divorce papers, he said quietly. I signed them yesterday. No contests, no claims. You'll have them by morning. I felt an unexpected wave of emotion. Not sadness exactly, but recognition of an ending. Thank you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued. But I want you to know what you've created here, how you've helped other families. It matters. It's bigger than what happened between us. My phone buzzed again. Maya updating me on the Mumbai situation. We'd successfully identified the manipulation ring before they could claim any victims. Another family saved, another tragedy prevented. It had to be bigger, I said finally. Otherwise, what was it all for? 6 months into leading Phoenix Shield, I found myself in an unexpected position, standing before the United Nations Financial Security Council in Geneva. The elegant chamber, with its curved rows of delegate seats and real-time translation systems, felt worlds away from that night in my Phoenix home when everything fell apart. Financial manipulation isn't just about stolen money, I began, surveying the faces of representatives from 40 nations. It's about exploited trust, weaponized intimacy, and the devastating ripple effects that extend far beyond individual victims. The presentation screen behind me displayed our latest global vulnerability map, not showing technical breach attempts, but emotional manipulation patterns. Red hotspots pulsed across financial centers worldwide, each representing potential families on the brink of destruction. In the past 6 months, Phoenix Shield's human-centric security protocols have prevented over $2 billion in fraud attempts, I continued. But more importantly, we've helped save 347 families from experiencing what my team and I know all too well, the personal devastation that follows when trust is shattered. A delegate from Switzerland raised her hand. Ms. Mitchell, your company's approach is revolutionary, but how do you address privacy concerns? These emotional vulnerability assessments seem intrusive. It was a fair question, one that had kept me awake many nights as we developed our methodology. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket, likely Maya updating me on our latest cases, but this moment required my full attention. We don't monitor private emotions, I explained. We track manipulation patterns. When multiple high-net-worth individuals in a region suddenly start exhibiting identical behavioral changes, increased isolation, unusual financial decisions, rapid trust formation with new advisors. That's not coincidence. That's a coordinated attack. The chamber's atmosphere shifted as understanding dawned. These weren't just statistics I was presenting. This was a new way of viewing security itself. After the presentation, I found myself in a quiet courtyard, processing the day's events. My secure tablet displayed updates from our global operations. Singapore team prevented attempted manipulation of 3 bank executives' Dubai office. Identified new social engineering pattern targeting divorced financiers. London branch. Successfully. Intervened in crypto scheme targeting elderly investors. A message from Lynn popped up. UN presentation trending in Asian markets. Banking stocks up 3% on news of new security protocols. I smiled, remembering our late-night conversation in that Singapore shophouse. We'd dreamed of changing how the world viewed security, but this was beyond our initial vision. My personal phone, separate from work now, a boundary I'd learned to maintain, showed a notification from my therapist. Don't forget tomorrow's session. Time to discuss the awards ceremony? Ah, yes, the ceremony. Time Magazine's Innovator of the Year award was sitting in its box in my Hong Kong apartment, still unopened. The accompanying article had called me the woman who transformed personal tragedy into global change. I hadn't read past the headline. A new message appeared, this one from James. We hadn't spoken since finalizing the divorce 3 months ago, but he kept in touch through occasional texts. Saw your UN speech online. The work you're doing, it's incredible. Remember when we thought losing our savings was the end of the world? You turned it into something world-changing. I stared at his message, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. Not because of his praise, but because for the first time reading his words didn't trigger pain or regret. My contemplation was interrupted by a call from Maya. Sarah, you need to see this. We've identified a pattern of social engineering attempts targeting cybersecurity experts. They're adapting, I said, unsurprised. Using our own methods against us? Not exactly. They're targeting people who've already been victims once. Using their past trauma as a vulnerability. The psychological profiles are incredibly sophisticated. I felt a chill, remembering the detailed files the original scammers had kept on James, on me, on all their targets. Send me the data. And Maya? Alert all team members. We need to be extra vigilant. Back in my Geneva hotel room, I reviewed the new threat analysis. The manipulation patterns were evolving, becoming more nuanced. The scammers weren't just exploiting people's greed or desperation anymore. They were targeting their resilience, their belief that they were too strong to fall for the same trap twice. A message from Echo appeared. Quantum encryption protocols in place. Personal security upgraded. But Sarah, they're not just after money this time. They want to discredit the entire human-centric security model. Of course they did. We'd built something that threatened their entire operation, not just in one region but globally. Phoenix Shield had become a symbol of transformation, of turning vulnerability into strength. Deploy countermeasures, I instructed Echo. But more importantly, prepare our people. The best defense against manipulation is understanding our own capacity for both strength and vulnerability. 1 year to the day after answering that fateful call from Arizona First Bank, I stood on the rooftop garden of Phoenix Shield's new global headquarters in Singapore. The space was designed with intentional symbolism. Desert plants from Arizona thriving alongside Asian orchids, representing resilience and adaptation. The London office just confirmed another successful intervention, Maya reported, joining me at the railing. Investment firm's CEO was being groomed by a private banking specialist. Pattern matched the Thompson Protocol exactly. The Thompson Protocol? Named after the man who never existed, the catalyst for everything we'd built. We'd turned that painful memory into a diagnostic tool that had saved countless others from similar fates. User feedback from the early warning. System? I asked, watching the sun set over Marina Bay. Extraordinary. The AI's emotional pattern recognition is catching manipulation attempts weeks before victims would typically realize something's wrong. The Swiss banks want to implement it across their entire private banking division. My tablet displayed our latest metrics. Over $5 billion in prevented fraud, more than 1,000 families spared from devastating losses, and a revolutionary shift in how the financial world approached security. But it was the smaller number that meant more to me. 47 couples who'd stayed together after attempting fraud interventions, their relationships stronger for having faced and understood their vulnerabilities. A notification popped up on my personal phone. The support group I'd started was celebrating its first anniversary. The message included a photo, smiling faces of people who'd turned their worst moments into strength, just as I had. Dr. Mitchell? One of our new behavioral analysts approached, still using my recently acquired doctorate title. The University of Singapore had fast-tracked my PhD in human-centric security systems, turning our methodology into an academic discipline. The World Economic Forum panel needs your input on the new global security standards. I nodded, but my attention was caught by another alert. Our early warning system had detected a familiar pattern, someone attempting to manipulate financial executives through their fertility struggles. The scammers were recycling old tactics, but this time we were ready. Deploy the fertility clinic protocol, I instructed. And Maya, activate the support network for the targeted families. They'll need understanding, not just protection. My secure phone lit up with a message from Lynn, now heading the Asian Banking Commission's Human Security Division. Regulatory framework approved. Every major financial institution will now require emotional vulnerability assessment. You did it, Sarah. You changed the game. As if on cue, a news alert flashed across my tablet. Another international fraud ring taken down, this time in Eastern Europe. They'd tried to adapt to our methods, but that was the irony. The more they studied human vulnerability, the more vulnerable they became to detection. Sarah? Maya's voice pulled me back to the present. There's someone here to see you. I turned, to find James standing in the rooftop garden's entrance. A year had changed him as much as it had changed me. He looked healthier, more grounded. The guilt that had haunted his eyes was replaced with something like peace. The university asked me to speak, he explained, about the psychology of financial manipulation from the victim's perspective. I wanted to check if you're comfortable with that. I studied him thoughtfully. We'd both found ways to transform our pain into purpose, though on very different paths. The students would benefit from your perspective, I said. Just as long as... I know. He smiled slightly. No personal details about us. That story belongs to you. But he was wrong. That story had never belonged to just us. It belonged to every person who'd ever trusted too easily, loved too blindly, or learned the hard way that strength often comes from acknowledging our vulnerabilities. My phone buzzed with another update. Phoenix Shield's new mobile app had just hit 1 million downloads. People worldwide were learning to recognize manipulation attempts, to protect themselves and their loved ones from emotional exploitation. We're launching a new initiative, I told James. Prevention rather than intervention. Teaching financial emotional intelligence in schools, universities, corporations. Would you be interested in contributing to the curriculum? He considered for a moment. Using our experience to prevent others from making the same mistakes? That feels right. As the last rays of sunlight painted Singapore's skyline in gold, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. From that devastating night in Phoenix to building a global movement for human-centric security. From a betrayed wife to a recognized innovator in behavioral finance protection. My tablet showed one final notification for the day. The World Health Organization had officially classified financial exploitation as a form of emotional abuse, largely based on Phoenix Shield's research. Another boundary crossed, another step toward understanding the human side of security. They're calling you the guardian of trust, Maya said, showing me the latest magazine cover. The woman who turned betrayal into a shield for others. I smiled, thinking of all the families we'd helped, all the pain we'd prevented. No, I corrected her. We're all guardians now. Every person who learns to recognize manipulation, who chooses awareness over ignorance, who helps others understand their vulnerabilities, they're all part of this shield. As I looked out over the city I now called home, I realized that some endings are really beginnings in disguise. What started as a personal tragedy had evolved into a global revolution in how we understand trust, security, and human connection. The sun set on Singapore, but Phoenix Shield's work was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new opportunities to help others. And I was ready for all of it. Stronger not despite my scars, but because of them. After all, true security isn't about being invulnerable. It's about understanding our vulnerabilities and helping others protect theirs. That's the lesson that cost me a marriage but gave me a mission. And that's the legacy I chose to build, one protected family at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.